Okay, let's unpack this. Close your eyes for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine a time long before modern science
Mhm.
when the greatest minds, they believed the universe held these profound hidden secrets, whispered down through generations.
Right, like a secret tradition.
Exactly. Secrets not just about the physical world, but about transformation. A process that could turn something base into something, well, perfect.
Not just lead into gold, though that's the popular image.
Right. Forget that image, the dusty alchemist obsessed with getting rich. We're diving deep into a perspective on Hermetic philosophy and alchemy that suggests the real work, the true transformation, happens much deeper.
Inside us.
That's right. We're exploring these ancient traditions through a lens that, frankly, treats them with utmost seriousness. It presents alchemy not as some primitive chemistry attempt,
Yeah.
but as a most profound philosophy, a sacred art, intensely focused on inner, intellectual, and crucially, spiritual transformation.
It's a completely different way of looking at what these historical figures were actually, trying to achieve. Completely different.
And our guide for this deep dive into this fascinating, often misunderstood world is, well, it's quite a remarkable source, Mary Anne Atwood's work on Hermetic philosophy and alchemy.
Atwood, yes. She wasn't just, like, rehashing old tales.
No, not at all. She meticulously compiled insights from various ancient and medieval writers, treating these subjects with a level of respect and depth that really challenges the common sort of modern dismissal.
Absolutely. Atwood's text, well, let's be honest, it can be pretty dense.
Oh,
It provides this coherent framework. It suggests many of these historical figures, often just labeled mystics or proto-scientists, were actually engaged in something far more significant, far more human and divine, perhaps, than merely trying to make physical gold.
So our mission today, then, is to take this intricate tapestry woven from centuries of thought, the core ideas, the symbols, the processes, the frankly demanding path, and the ultimate goals as presented in this source material and, well, unpack it for you.
Make it understandable, right? Intriguing, maybe even surprisingly relevant to our lives today.
Exactly. And standing right at the very center of this tradition, this ancient stream of knowledge, is the legendary, almost mythical figure of Hermes Trismegistus.
Yes, Hermes, the thrice great. Now, he wasn't exactly a historical person in the way we think of one today. More like a composite figure, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, an embodiment of ancient wisdom, especially associated with Egypt.
Right. He was revered in antiquity, held in similar esteem to figures like, say, the biblical Solomon, celebrated for immense wisdom, deep understanding of nature's hidden workings.
And specifically for discovering the, what was the phrase? The quintessential perfectibility.
Of the three kingdoms in their homogeneal unity. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It really is.
But it points to this core idea. There's a perfectible essence hidden within minerals, plants, animals, and that they're all fundamentally unified at some deeper level.
So his title, Thrice Great Hermes, comes from that understanding, that spiritual intelligence of universal law.
That's the idea presented. He wasn't just seen as a philosopher or a priest. He was seen as embodying this profound, almost divine understanding of reality itself.
It's genuinely tragic, though, when you think about how much of the knowledge attributed to him, to this whole tradition, has just vanished.
Absolutely tragic. The source explicitly mentions the destruction of many books attributed to him.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just like accidental fires or floods.
No, deliberate acts. Diocletian is mentioned, right?
Diocletian. And Clemens Alexandrinus, writing back in late antiquity, apparently knew the titles of many of these works that are now completely lost to us.
Wow.
It represents a massive break, a huge loss in the historical record of these ideas. We're really just working with fragments, compared to what might have once existed.
But thankfully, we aren't left completely empty-handed. We do have some key texts that survived, attributed to Hermes or the Hermetic tradition. The source highlights a couple as being particularly significant.
That's right. The Asclepian dialogues and the divine Poimander are pointed out as crucial surviving remnants. The Poimander, or sometimes called the Poimander, is especially praised in the source, even considering its transmission through Latin by Ficinus and then into English by Dr. Everard. The source calls it a small work, yes, but one that, quote, surpasses most that are extant for sublimity of doctrine and expression.
That's high praise. Sublimity of doctrine and expression.
Think about that. Of all the philosophical and religious texts out there, this one is singled out for its profound depth and, well, its elegant language.
What is it about it that makes it so special, according to the source?
It's described as having versus flow forth eloquent, as it were, from the fountain of nature, instinct with intelligence. It's not seen as just human writing.
Like it's channeling something.
Exactly, channeling a deeper, natural, intelligent reality.
Yeah.
And the impact it's said to have is remarkable. Reading it could be powerful enough to move the rational skeptic off from his negative ground into the happier regions of intelligible reality.
So it's not just information, it's meant to actually change your perception, shift your reality.
That's the claim. It's presented as a text that can literally open your mind to a deeper, more meaningful understanding of existence.
Yeah.
Beyond just, surface-level skepticism. It's meant to catalyze a change in the reader.
So not abstract philosophy just for debate, but something to be experienced, to transform you as you engage with it?
Precisely. It aims at a direct encounter with something real, something intelligent underpinning the universe. However, the source does make a distinction here.
Okay.
While the Poimander and Asclepius focus more on the elevated, the theosophic and ultimate aspects are potential divine capabilities and promise of regeneration.
Right, the big picture stuff.
Yeah, they don't exactly give you the practical roadmap. For the physical ground and the actual practical method of alchemy, the source points to another work attributed to Hermes, the Tractatus Aureus.
The Golden Treatise.
The Golden Treatise.
Yeah.
Described as an admirable relic, 7 chapters, supposedly providing the procedural backbone for what these alchemists were trying to do.
And then there's the piece that almost everyone seems to have heard of, even if they don't know much else about Hermeticism, the Emerald Table.
Ah, yes. The Emerald Tablet, or Table. The source presents this as something really unique, really authentic. Perhaps the most direct remnant we have from the Egyptian roots of this sacred art.
And it's supposed to contain the whole essence.
It's said to encapsulate the entire working principle and total subject of the art in just a few enigmatical but remarkable lines, like a super concentrated formula, a seed of wisdom holding the core of the whole tradition.
And the line that's most famous, that echoes through centuries of esoteric thought, we all know it.
The principle of correspondence. That which is above is as that which is below, and that which is below is as that which is above.
For performing the miracles of the one thing.
Exactly. And this isn't just like a nice poetic phrase. It's presented as a fundamental operating principle of reality.
A mirroring between levels.
A deep structural mirroring between different levels of existence. The macrocosm, the universe, the cosmos, the divine realms, and the microcosm, the natural world, and crucially, us, humanity. What happens on the grandest scale is reflected in the smallest.
So understand one and you get insight into the other. If you understand the human being, the microcosm, you can understand the universe, the macrocosm, and vice versa.
Precisely. It implies the same laws, the same principles, the same processes are at play, whether you're looking at the stars, or the earth, or deep inside the human soul.
Wow.
And the table touches on related ideas, too, like how all things were from one by the mediation of one, so all things proceeded from this one thing by adaptation, suggesting a single ultimate source for everything.
A unity behind the diversity.
Right, from which all things emerge and are adapted into their myriad forms. And it provides these symbolic representations of the forces involved, like the father of it is the sun, the mother of it is the moon.
Not literal parents, obviously.
No. Symbolic of active and passive principles, fundamental energies. And the nurse thereof is the earth, the material ground from which creation unfolds, all working together in this cosmic dance.
It's very clear this tradition sees ancient Egypt as its birthplace, its foundation.
And the source makes a really compelling case for Egypt's foundational role. It highlights its amazing reputation for power, wealth, wisdom, and magic skill throughout the ancient world.
Even the Greeks looked up to Egypt, didn't they?
Massively. Which leads to the question the source poses. Why did so many famous Greek philosophers, Pythagoras, Thales, Democritus, Plato, these are giants of Western thought, why did they travel to Egypt and stay there for years?
They weren't just on a package tour.
Definitely not. They weren't just sightseeing. The source argues they went to be initiated in the wisdom and learning of those Egyptians, specifically seeking knowledge of the mighty art by which Egypt arose, governed, and dazzled the whole contemporary world.
This art wasn't just politics or building pyramids then.
No, it was seen as something much deeper, a profound science, a powerful wisdom that allowed Egypt to flourish and command respect. These Greek thinkers were essentially on a pilgrimage, seeking access to the fundamental principles that underpinned Egypt's greatness.
It paints a picture of Egypt holding these incredible secrets to power and understanding, secrets coveted by the intellectual elite of the ancient world.
And quite chillingly, the source includes this poignant prophecy from the Asclepius itself, foretelling Egypt's future decline. It's a really stark vision.
What does it describe?
A sacred land losing its connection to the divine. It talks about the loss of religion, divinity, and even man deserting the land, darkness being preferred to light, a complete perversion of values where, get this, the irreligious shall be thought wise, the furious brave, and the worst of men shall be considered good.
Wow, that sounds like society completely turned on its head. Sacredness scorned, vice celebrated.
Exactly. The prophecy speaks of scorn for the soul, for immortality, the divine voice being silenced, the very nature of the land and its people becoming corrupted. It's a bleak forecast of spiritual decay.
And the source links this decline back to the Egyptians themselves.
Yes, suggesting they failed by neglecting to obey the law by which she governed. Their wisdom and power weren't just inherent. They were tied to living in accordance with certain universal laws. Failing to uphold these principles led to their downfall and the loss of their knowledge.
But even in that ruin, the source argues the evidence of their superior knowledge remains.
Yes, that's the argument. Even in decline, Egypt's surviving monuments, the temples, pyramids, hieroglyphs, are presented as plain evidence of lost science and the vestiges of an intelligence superior to our own. They hint at a level of understanding, a capability that we've somehow lost touch with.
So the Hermetic tradition isn't just history, it's about acknowledging this lost knowledge and trying to recover it.
Pretty much. Like trying to piece together fragments of a shattered mirror that once reflected the entire cosmos.
Key texts like the Poimander and the Emerald Table laying down principles, and this narrative of lost Egyptian wisdom. This whole setup really shifts the perspective on what alchemy might be about.
Absolutely. If your first thought is still, dusty labs and guys trying to make physical gold,
Yeah.
the source material we're digging into today wants you to just wipe that image clean.
Yeah.
It explicitly challenges that modern misconception of alchemy as mere metallurgy, or just a greedy quest for wealth.
And it uses historical examples to really drive this home, right? Stories of people who failed precisely because they were just chasing physical gold.
It does. There's a really poignant example of an alchemist who lost absolutely everything he owned. Because the books he was following, which he thought held the secret, proved untrue when he tried to make the philosopher's stone using, common materials in a purely physical way.
It left him ruined.
Utterly ruined. A cautionary tale. The source also quotes a poet, listing various tradesmen, brewers, masons, tinkers, ordinary folks who pursued this noble craft with great presumption and hasty credence.
Just hoping to get rich quick.
Basically. But they ended up poor and made to unthrive, finding only a scoff mockery. Their efforts were futile because they fundamentally misunderstood the goal.
So the text is essentially saying, if you are focused solely on making physical gold, you are missing the entire point.
Exactly. You were working on the wrong level, driven by the wrong motives. Instead, the source repeatedly emphasizes that true alchemy, as understood by the authentic adepts, is most profound philosophy, a sacred art, a subtle science of holy alchemy.
Sacred, philosophical, scientific, but in a different way.
Right. It's not about material gain. It's about something sacred, philosophical, and deeply scientific in a way that includes principles we might not immediately recognize as science today.
And the core principle, the thing that really differentiates this understanding.
This is where it gets, truly radical. The source asserts that the true perfection sought in alchemy is found only by experimentally seeking at home within themselves.
Wait, seeking at home within themselves.
Let that sink in. The laboratory isn't primarily some external space with furnaces and retorts, although those might be used symbolically or analogously.
So the main lab, it's inside.
The primary laboratory is the alchemist's own inner being, their mind, their soul, their spirit. The experiment is one of self-discovery and self-transformation. It turns the focus 180 degrees inward.
That connects to the microcosm idea, doesn't it?
Directly, the source quotes this beautiful Latin verse. Quid mirum nocier mundum si possunt homines, quibus est et mundus in ipsis exemplum crei quisque est in imagine parva.
Which translates roughly as,
Why is it wondrous to know the world if men can, in whom the world itself exists, and each is a small image as God?
wow, the universe is contained within us.
That's the concept. According to this view, humanity contains the universal reason within himself. Man isn't just a physical body. He symbolizes with matter, elements, plants, animals, heavens, angelical sphere. and with God.
There's a correspondence, like the Emerald Table says, between every level of the cosmos and the human being.
Exactly. So the implication is the alchemist doesn't need to manipulate the external world primarily to understand it. By deeply knowing himself, by understanding this inner universe.
He can come to know all things.
That's the idea. The true transformation sought isn't of external stuff, but of the alchemist themselves, the microcosm, bringing it into harmony with the macrocosm.
But this perspective doesn't start from a place of us being already perfect or whole, does it? It seems to acknowledge we're flawed.
Far from it. It begins by acknowledging a profound imperfection, a fallen state. According to this view, our current consciousness is separated off from the antecedent essentiality, our true original essence.
So we're cut off.
Fundamentally disconnected from our source and our potential. As a result, we perceive nothing of our true selves. This life we experience now is described as a diminution of existence, a state of being less than, a shadow of what we could be.
Like the quote from Solomon, "The corruptible body presseth down the soul."
Precisely. The physical existence, in this view, is a weight, a limitation on our true spiritual nature. We're kind of lost to ourselves, covered over by impurities.
There's that analogy from Plato, right, about Glaucus.
Yes, that's such a powerful image. The source cites Plato describing the viscous soul circulating in Adamical defilements. This viscous soul is compared to the sea god Glaucus.
Who was originally human.
Right, but fell into the sea and became so deformed by the foreign weeds and parasites that had grown about him that in every respect he resembled the beast rather than what he really was.
That's incredibly evocative. It shows how our true nature can be obscured, just buried under layers of distortion.
It represents, according to the source, the divine germ of humanity, beheld under the thousand evils of its birth. This is the starting point, the raw material for the alchemical work in this interpretation.
This potentially divine essence, trapped and deformed.
Exactly, trapped by the conditions of this limited fallen existence. And alchemy in this context is the means to reverse that state. It's the path to shed those weeds and parasites and recover the original true form.
So the physical secret of the Philosopher's Stone, it's about regeneration.
Precisely. The source explicitly states it concerns this regenerative mystery and the intellectual ground of reality. It's not about making literal gold, it's about achieving a new birth in universal intelligence.
A spiritual and intellectual rebirth.
Moving from that state of deformity, symbolized by Glaucus, back to a state of conscious, intelligent, unified participation in universal reality. Transforming the base metal self into the perfected gold self, but all happening within the individual.
Okay, that fundamentally changes everything about how we approach alchemy. If the work is internal, and the starting material is this fallen self, how did the text describe the actual process? Because the language is notoriously, well, obscure.
And the source doesn't shy away from that at all. It directly addresses the deliberate use of complex, veiled language metaphor, enigma, allegory by the alchemical adepts.
It even says they seem to have a directly contrary aim to just explaining things clearly.
Right. They chose to envelop truths in mystery so obscure.
But why? Why make it so difficult?
The source suggests a couple of key reasons. Firstly, to prevent the truth from being openly obvious, especially to the unprepared and the unworthy. This knowledge was considered potent, maybe even dangerous if misused.
And secondly,
To prevent it from being profaned. This wasn't just academic information, it was considered sacred. Exposing it casually or to those with impure motives, like the greedy guys we mentioned.
would be a kind of violation.
It's exactly, a profanity. The source mentions they used a variety of artifices, according to the Kabbalistic method, sometimes even presenting steps out of order or inverted.
So unless you had the key,
An internal understanding, or maybe guidance from a teacher, you couldn't just follow the recipe. It was the system designed to test and filter the aspirants. The difficulty itself was part of the process, like an alchemical firewall.
Okay, so let's try to decode some of it. What about the symbolic process they describe, starting with the famous first matter?
Right, the prima materia, the starting point. In this philosophical interpretation, the first matter is described as the vulgar matter, or chaos.
Which represents?
It represents the unpurified, unrefined state of the self, those Adamical defilements we talked about. It's seen as defiled, full of heterogeneous qualities, conflicting desires, impure thoughts, unresolved inner conflicts, the very things that make up the viscous soul state, the inner chaos.
And the very first step then must be purification, getting rid of those defilements.
Precisely. The source quotes Albertus Magnus emphasizing this. Take the occult arcanum, which is our brass, and wash it that it may be pure and clean. The first rule of the work is a perfect solution.
Okay, occult arcanum, our brass. Not literal brass, then.
No. The occult arcanum is the hidden potential within the self, symbolized here as brass, a common, unrefined metal. The washing and perfect solution symbolize that crucial first step of purification, breaking down and cleansing the impure aspects of the self, dissolving those heterogeneous qualities that make up the chaos of our unredeemed state, dissolving the old impure self.
Which leads to the core process, the central rhythm of alchemy, solve et coagula.
Exactly, the famous mantra, solve, coagula, fige, dissolve, coagulate, fix. Or, as the Benedictine monk quote simplifies it, solve and coagula, dissolve and coagulate. This two-step process, often repeated cyclically, is the engine of transformation. It's described as the real experimental inversion. It's meant to prove that imperfections aren't inherent to our true essence, but are accidental, acquired. It involves, symbolically, making light things heavy, spirits no spirits.
How does that work? Dissolve and coagulate.
It's a dynamic process. First, a stage of death and contrition. That's the solve, dissolving the old form, breaking it down, followed by generation, that's the coagula, a reunion of the principles under another law to bring forth the new life.
So you break something down, enter that chaos or death, and then you build it back up, but differently. Reconstitute it under a new law, a higher principle.
Exactly right. You dissolve the corruptible form, and from that dissolved state you coagulate, you reform the underlying essence, but guided now by a higher, purer principle, bringing forth a regenerated new life. This cycle of dissolution and recombination is absolutely central.
This seems connected to the three principles often mentioned, salt, sulfur, and mercury. How do they fit into this inner symbolic work?
Good question. The source explains that after nature's original unity is brought into an annihilate condition through that dissolution process.
Dissolve part.
Right, the breaking down. From that, three great magnetic principles of being are said to arise. These are salt, sulfur, and mercury. And they exist in this fundamental relationship described as agent, patient, and offspring universal.
Agent, patient, offspring. Okay, so what's the role of each one internally? What's salt?
Salt is presented as the voluntary substance, initially bound in the lowest region, the generative mineral life. Think of it as the fixed essence, the core vitality or conscious will, but currently trapped or anchored in the most material, unrefined mineral aspects of our being.
Like basic desires, inertia.
Yeah, our physical limitations, that kind of foundational stuff. For transformation, this salt must be translated or drawn up into the medial life, lifted from the purely material level to become light and able to grow, to participate in a higher, more conscious existence.
And sulfur.
Sulfur is described as the occult luminous principle, or light. This represents the divine spark within, the innate intelligence, the fiery active principle that initiates change and enlightenment. It's the transformative force, the agent.
And mercury connects them.
Mercury is the pure quintessence, the elixir of life. It's the refined, pure spirit that emerges from the interaction or union of salt and sulfur, described as pure, agile, intelligent living. This is the transmuting medium, the liberated and purified consciousness, capable of facilitating further transformation and animating the whole process. It's like active, enlightened awareness.
The process is also marked by stages, often symbolized by colors, isn't it? Black, white, red?
Yes, the alchemical colors are highly symbolic. They map the progress of the inner work. It typically begins with blackness, the negrito, representing putrefaction, the death of the first life, or the black darkness, from which the potential for the tincture, the transformation rises. This is the stage of dissolution, confronting the chaos and impurity of the first matter, the breakdown of the old self. It's often described as a difficult, dark, challenging phase.
And after the blackness, the darkness, comes white, the albedo.
Exactly. White signifies purification, a state of comparative purity. This is the white virginal spirit. The matter of the self has undergone the philosophical contrition, the mortification of those impure elements, and has been cleansed. It represents clarity, purity, readiness for the next stage.
And the final culmination, the rubedo, the red stage.
Red is the ultimate goal. It represents the red and living tincture. The final perfected stage, often symbolized by the red bird or the phoenix rising from the ashes, the lower sensuous spirit. This is the state of completed transformation, the philosopher's stone itself, embodying vitality, power, and active, enlightened engagement with the world.
The symbolism in alchemy gets really wild, especially with all the animals, the zoos of the work, as the source calls it. Can you unpack some of those for us? What do they mean in this inner journey?
Right. These animal symbols are potent archetypes. They represent different forces or stages encountered internally. For instance, you often see the green lion, or figures like Typhon or the fire drake appearing early on.
What does the green lion represent?
The source describes it as representing the newly roused efficient, which is exceeding wrathful. It's the contrary will, shooting forth satanic radiance in personality.
Whoa, that sounds pretty intense. What is that contrary will?
In this context, you could see it as the initial eruption of raw, untamed inner energy, resistance. Maybe the shadow self really making itself known when you first start confronting your inner chaos.
The ego fighting back?
Yeah, the ego's fierce resistance to being dissolved, to change, manifesting as wrath, pride, uncontrolled impulses. It's like encountering this powerful, dangerous, raw force within yourself.
And how is that force dealt with in the symbolism?
Well, often this green lion phase is followed by symbols like the venomous black toad or the horrible devouring dragon.
Sounds even worse.
They represent the stage of mortification, the difficult, often painful process of confronting and killing, or perhaps better, integrating this inner destructive force, this resistance. It's a necessary death of the old, resistant, egoic self.
And from those dark symbols, like the toad or dragon, you then get something like the swan.
Yes, the swan beautifully symbolizes the purified white stage, the albedo, that emerges after the blackness and the mortification. It represents purity, grace, transformation achieved.
And then the phoenix, the red bird.
As we said, the phoenix or red bird arises from the ashes of that sensuous spirit, symbolizing rebirth, resurrection, the final perfected state, the fiery red tincture.
What about some of the others, the vulture and the crow?
The source interprets those as related symbols for the newborn quintessential spirit or Proteus. They represent the first sublimed quintessence.
So they appear after the initial breakdown and purification.
Right. The vulture is seen as the active aspect, the crow as the passive, suggesting the initial emergence of this refined, purified inner essence, which might still be somewhat unstable or changeable, like Proteus the shapeshifter.
And the two serpents, often shown intertwined.
Those symbolize the living male and a living female, spirits or principles that need to be united in the alchemical marriage, the conjunction. It represents the integration of opposing forces within the psyche or soul, maybe intellect and intuition, will and understanding, active and passive energies coming into balance.
Beyond the creatures and colors, the source uses other really evocative terms, too.
Yes, absolutely. There's philosophical contrition, which points to that deep inner work of purification, a kind of spiritual remorse or grinding down of the ego. There's the universal lodestone of existence, which is used to describe will.
That's a powerful image. Will as a magnet drawing reality.
A powerful idea suggesting our inherent will has this attractive force. Then there's the aurific light, or solar tincture, representing the inner divine radiance, the golden light of enlightenment.
And that paradoxical water.
Ah, yes. The water of our sea, the water of life, not wetting the hands. It's clearly symbolic, a non-physical water. The subtle solvent or medium necessary for inner dissolution and transformation, operating on a non-material level.
And crystalline diaphanotry.
Suggesting a state of transparent purity, crystal clear clarity of being, achieved at the end.
The source also pulls in classical mythology, connecting these ideas to ancient stories.
It does. It sees prefigurations of the alchemical journey in myths like Jason and Medea seeking the golden fleece, that quest for a precious, hidden, transformative substance. Or figures like Bacchus and Ariadne, Peleus and Thetis.
Seen as representing the alchemical marriage.
Exactly. Symbolic narratives depicting the union and complementary principles, the conjunction necessary for the work to succeed.
And the symbol of the golden bough seems particularly important.
It's a really rich one.
Mm-hmm.
The source links the alchemical path directly to the story of Aeneas needing the golden bough, given by the Sibyl, to pass safely through the underworld, Tartarus.
To reach Elysium and see his father.
Right. In this interpretation, Tartarus represents the death of this life. Not necessarily physical death, but the dissolution of the current impure state of existence. The solve stage again, in a way.
So to get through that death, that dissolution, you need the golden bough.
Which is presented symbolically as the rational light, or the aurific seed. It's the divine intelligence, the inner spark of true reason and light.
And that's what helps you navigate the inner underworld.
Exactly. It's necessary to navigate and overcome the obstacles encountered in the inner work. These obstacles are depicted as the region of chimeras, the realm of illusions, phantasms, imaginative forms, distorted projections that arise from the unpurified mind or soul during the process.
So the golden bough, the rational light, cuts through the illusions.
It's the necessary guide to penetrate those illusions, dispel the chimeras, and allow safe passage to the pure essence of reason and reality, symbolized by Elysium.
Okay, we've navigated some seriously dense language and symbolism here, trying to map out this inner work. But it sounds incredibly difficult, not just complex, but demanding.
The source is absolutely emphatic about that. The difficulty, the dedication required. It's described flat out as difficult and reputed tedious. This is not portrayed as some kind of quick fix.
No instant enlightenment here.
Definitely not. It strongly advises against haste, citing that famous alchemical maxim, festina lente, hasten slowly.
The dolphin and the anchor, right. Speed combined with steadiness.
Exactly. Swift, but sure. The source also uses the story of Oedipus and his lame feet as a kind of warning.
How so?
As a warning against rushing the solution or dissolution stage before proper understanding or preparation is achieved. Trying to force the process, skipping necessary steps, leads to imbalance and failure. Just like Oedipus acted impulsively without fully understanding the oracle, leading to his downfall, symbolized by his inability to walk straight. Patience, methodical progress, absolutely crucial.
And it seems this path isn't just open to anyone who feels like trying it. The source lists some pretty specific qualifications for the true adept.
It's definitely presented as not being a free-for-all. Success requires much more than just intellectual curiosity or, practical skill, if we're talking physical alchemy.
What does it require?
It demands rectitude of intention and the blessing of God. The purpose has to be pure, aligned with divine will, not selfish gain. Roger Bacon is quoted saying, "One must be sanctified in mind and purified in soul so as to be united to God."
So it's fundamentally a path of spiritual purification and alignment, not just learning techniques.
Exactly. Intellectual brilliance isn't enough on its own. Prudence is essential, and one must be a lover of wisdom, not just knowledge, someone who truly values understanding the deepest truths. Solomon and Basil Monk are referenced here.
It sounds like a calling, almost.
Ultimately, the source suggests it's about having the spirit already prepared and being, in a sense, endowed by God. It's presented as potentially a divine gift or calling, requiring a state of inner readiness that must be cultivated and perhaps also granted.
A critical element you mentioned earlier was faith. How does faith fit into what sounds like, in its own way, an experimental process?
This is one of the most striking points, I think, especially for a modern perspective. The source states unequivocally, without faith, without the ideal conception, nothing is or can be proven. For is not this, in fact, the leader of all experimental inquiry?
Wait, faith is the leader of the inquiry, not the result.
That's what it says. It completely flips the script on how we usually think about investigation, doesn't it? Where empirical evidence comes first. Here, faith, the ideal conception, is presented as the initiator of the experiment.
But it's not blind faith.
No, it's not portrayed as blind credulity. It's described more like a liberty of thought that allows you to glimpse possibilities beyond immediate common observation. It's presented as a kind of witness within us to a reality that exists beyond our present limited experience.
So this inner conviction, this capacity to even conceive of a higher reality and transformation, is necessary to even start.
It's the necessary fuel and the compass for the journey. Without it, the source implies, you wouldn't even know where to begin looking, because the object of the work lies beyond ordinary sight. You need to believe it's possible to even try.
And connected closely to faith is the role of prayer and invoking divine intervention.
Absolutely critical. Seeking and invoking divine aid is seen as essential, but not as just a passive wish list. It's an active participation. The source details 3 classes of prayer described by the Neoplatonist Iamblichus.
What are they?
There's collective prayer, which gathers and focuses the supplicant's own mental powers. Then the prayer of communion of operation, which calls forth and aligns the practitioner with concordant spiritual forces or principles. And finally, the prayer of final union, which is the culmination, leading from faith to its actual realization.
And what do these prayers achieve in the work?
They're presented as leading progressively towards illumination, communion with higher principles, and ultimately a perfect plenitude of divine fire. Prayer isn't just asking. It's an active process that nourishes the vigor of our intellect and makes the soul's receptacles far more capacious.
It prepares the alchemist, makes them receptive.
Exactly. Receptive to the influx of divine light and power needed for the transformation. And the Source emphasizes praying within the living temple from the divine light within, suggesting this divine connection is primarily accessed internally, in the sacred space of one's own being, aligning the inner microcosm with the divine macrocosm through active engagement.
Okay, so it's a demanding path requiring purity, faith, prayer. What are the main obstacles then, according to the Source? What stops people?
The Source is crystal clear that the wrong intentions are the primary blockage. Pursuing the art for avarice, ambition, or mere curious hope, if that's your motivation, you will not find the true form of gold.
Because you're looking for the wrong thing on the wrong level.
Precisely. The true art will simply elude you. The Source strongly critiques those who misuse the knowledge or defile the divine part of their essence for private, selfish ends.
And those people are described pretty harshly.
Yes, they're called judged and are even associated with the oppressive and secret power of devils. There's that story used as an example about the Arabian magician trying to steal a boy.
The boy symbolizing purity or potential.
Perhaps. It illustrates how wickedness, impure motives, literally prevents direct access to the true material or subject of the work. Moral and spiritual impurity creates an impenetrable barrier.
And Mammon, the spirit of worldly wealth, seems to embody this whole problem.
He really does. Mammon is described as the least erected spirit, the lowest, most earthbound principle. He hinders the true work because he only draws dead metal, mere material wealth, and actually steals energy from the divine source.
So Mammon can't activate the real transformation.
He cannot quicken the aurific seed in life, that inner golden potential. His spirit is too gross, too focused on the material plane to penetrate the subtle spiritual depth required for the true alchemical work. The pursuit of mammon is fundamentally incompatible with the pursuit of true living transformation. And this connects to the critique of the false doctors or greedy alchemists.
Yes, those who practice just for ambition and gain, misleading others and profaning the art. The Source states their actions led to the perishing of art and the loss of divine gifts. It suggests the true practice withered when it got corrupted by base motives.
It really reinforces that the intention, the ethical and spiritual state of the practitioner isn't just secondary, it's fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. But even with the right intentions, the path isn't smooth sailing. There's still an internal struggle involved, right?
Definitely. The Source describes a constant war in the work between the self-will and the universal will. Okay, explain that. The self-will versus the universal will. It's the inner conflict. The battle between your limited ego-driven desires, intentions, your personal agenda, that's the self-will, and the higher universal principle of transformation that is trying to operate within you. All your faculties, all your desires get engaged in this battle.
And the universal will is trying to...
What?
Take over.
Not exactly take over, but draw the faculties and desires into its service, to refine them. But this happens, interestingly, by first destroying them and then reproducing them in a transmuted form.
A death and rebirth of the will itself, of desires.
Seems like it. The self-will, often symbolized by Saturn resistant, fixed, bound to the material, must be overcome. But not just through brute force or suppression.
How then?
The Source says it's overcome by satiation with the rational light or aurific seed, which is fascinating. It suggests the self-will is transformed not by being starved or crushed, but by being filled, saturated with divine intelligence and light.
So it's integrated and transmuted rather than just defeated.
Exactly. Permeated by a higher principle rather than just locked in a violent struggle.
Okay, so after all this incredibly difficult inner work, the dissolving, purifying, the symbolic battles, the refinement of will, what is the ultimate goal? It's clearly not making physical gold, but what is it?
The ultimate goal, as presented here, really transcends any simple material outcome. It's described fundamentally as salvation, a transmutation of the component principles of life itself achieved through this process of internal circulation and refinement.
Salvation as transmutation.
Yes, it's about transmigrating human identity out of this animal terrene existence, this limited earthbound state through the ethereal elements, to attain the supremacy of reason and consciously re-enter its first cause, its divine origin.
That sounds like achieving a completely different state of being altogether.
It is. It's that new birth in universal intelligence fully realized. The ultimate aim is described as a profound, almost mystical union, a supersentient union, the nuptial sublime, mentis et universi.
The marriage of mind and universe.
Yes. The union of the higher intellect, mentis, with the universe. The limited human consciousness, the solitary thought, unites with a simple understanding of its own ethereal essence, proceeding into this state of powerful conscious subsistence. This union is presented as the fulfillment of the Hermetic mystery, the true object of the alchemical art.
Union with the divine, union with the cosmos, achieved internally.
Yes, a conscious experiential union. The microcosm realizes its identity with the macrocosm. The individual intellect merges with the universal intelligence. And with this union comes the revelation, the attainment of wisdom.
Not just information, but wisdom. What kind?
The source calls it the flower of human intellect. The intellectus naturam habens subtilem ad intelligendum res intelligibles. The intellect having a subtle nature for understanding intelligible things. Things grasped by pure intellect, not just the senses.
So it's the wisdom that underlies reality.
It's presented as the foundation of the world and mysteries. Echoing that quote from Royflin, nothing is in the beginning but wisdom. Wisdom isn't just the result, it's the foundational principle you gain access to through this process.
And this isn't just theoretical armchair wisdom. It sounds like something you experience.
Profoundly experiential knowledge, yes. The source quotes descriptions from participants in the ancient mysteries, like at Epidaurus. They described approaching death, the dissolution of the old self passing through elements, the stages of the work, and then seeing the sun at midnight.
Divine light in the darkness.
A vision of divine light in the deepest darkness or the darkest stage, and drawing near to the gods. It speaks of simple and blessed visions resident in a pure light, experienced by the initiated.
Visions of what?
Where they see gods and powers revealing themselves, not as mere phantasms or illusions, but as illuminations, true representations of himself, divinity in the true manner of souls.
So a direct, clear perception of spiritual reality, not just a hallucination or projection.
Exactly. A vision experienced in a purified state, resident in pure light, revealing the true nature of the divine. And the result of achieving this perfected state, this union, is often symbolized by the philosopher's stone, also called Aethoth, the universal medicine, the water of life.
But not a physical stone.
In this interpretation, no. It's the perfected state of the alchemists themselves, the principle of transmuting power embodied within them.
And the source attributes incredible virtues, incredible properties to this achieved stone.
It quotes Kunrath extensively on this, listing what this stone, this achieved state, can do. It's described as a universal medium of restoration and preservation.
Healing power.
Capable of expelling suffering and disease, both of the mind and the body. It can supposedly rectify nature, not just turning lead to gold, but restoring perfection in vegetables and animals too. It can advance crystals to gems, make gold and silver potable, suggesting it imparts life or vitality, free animals from disease,
Right.
fresh vegetables.
That's an astonishing list of powers.
It goes on. It's even said to burn perpetually, symbolically, in a special lamp, and to expel evil spirits. It exalts natural abilities, like healing. It draws memory and prudence, excites joy, boldness, fortitude.
It sounds like the ultimate state of being.
The culmination of Kunrath's description is simply, everything obeys this stone. In this view, the philosopher's stone represents the ultimate power of the soul united with divine intelligence, a state embodying health, harmony, purity, and the ability to bring about positive transformation in oneself and exert this profound, almost miraculous influence on the world.
And this connects back to the idea of the true physician.
Yes, exactly. The stone is called a medicine of men and metals, healing both the human being and the natural world. Figures like Chiron, the wise centaur healer, and Aesculapius, the god of medicine, are mentioned as symbols related to this power.
And there's that description from Helmont.
Yes, Helmont's description of the physician chosen by God whose work is fructified, whose hands are anointed with blessing. Diseases flee before him. His very steps bring felicity. And crucially, this figure operates not for gain or ambition, but out of charity and mercy.
The polar opposite of the greedy, false doctors.
Precisely. It just underscores again those moral and spiritual prerequisites. The true adept, having achieved this inner transformation and embodied the stone's power, becomes a channel for healing and harmony in the world, acting from selfless love and compassion. It's a state achieved when that arrogance and sloth, which extinguish charity, are reversed, and the giver of lights bestows his gifts once more on a purified soul.
It's a truly powerful vision of human potential, but listening to all this ancient, dense, symbolic wisdom, it can feel so distant from our everyday lives or 21st century concerns. What does it mean for us now?
Well, the source itself actually touches on this. It critiques what it calls the present time. And remember, this was written a while ago, but it still resonates at a time focused intensely on temporal utility, on worshiping the earth-born goddess of worldly gain, Mammon.
suggesting that the problem described in ancient times, that pursuit of dead metal instead of true life, is still very much with us, maybe even more so.
It certainly seems to suggest that modern society, too, is largely focused on the external, the material, on gain and utility, echoing the false aims of those failed alchemists from centuries ago.
And the source points out something interesting, that even those devoted to worldly gain often feel something is missing.
Yes, it points out that even among the devotees of worldly gain, there often exists a most real and bitter sense of its insufficiency. Despite all the external stuff, the success, the accumulation, the entertainment, there's often an inner lack, right? A void that material pursuits just can't fill.
So this ancient wisdom, this hermetic path, offers an alternative way to address that insufficiency.
That's one way to look at it, yes. Instead of endlessly seeking external passing excitements, the fleeting pleasures and distractions of the material world, this tradition encourages steady perseverance looking within.
Looking within for what?
For higher objects of pursuit revealed by conscience, by that inner witness we talked about, the witness to something more. It fundamentally redirects the search for meaning and fulfillment inward towards the source of our own being.
And it's not suggesting this is irrational or anti-reason, is it?
No, the source is careful on this point. It reassures that the wisdom of the ancients doesn't necessarily contradict human reason. Rather, it posits that this wisdom was the basis of their philosophy, the foundation of their worldview.
Whereas
For us today, it often lies at the boundary of our knowledge, just beyond what our current rational frameworks can easily grasp or validate. It's suggesting that what they explored through these symbolic systems might be a domain of reality that our science hasn't fully mapped yet, but which might still be accessible through other means, like inner experience.
And we still have the capacity for this kind of inner exploration, even if the whole system seems overwhelming.
Yes, the source highlights our innate human capacities as starting points. Our inherent faith, that capacity for believing in and reaching for something beyond our immediate experience, that's key. And our power, the felt sense of agency and will that we recognize spontaneously.
Will, described as the universal lodestone.
Exactly, that powerful inner force that can be directed. These fundamental aspects of human nature are presented as potential points of connection, innate tools we already possess for beginning this inner exploration.
So it offers a possibility then, a different direction.
It offers a prospect of escape or amelioration even from the limitations and maybe the evils of this current mode of existence for those who are open to it. It's presented as a path to purify and corroborate the self, to overcome those Adamical defilements and inner conflicts, leading towards a state of harmony, beauty, and conscious participation in a higher reality. It's really an invitation to look inward, using this ancient wisdom as a potential map for profound personal transformation.
Wow. What an incredible journey, really, through this dense, complex, but utterly fascinating material. We've gone from the almost mythical Hermes and the remnants of Egyptian wisdom through the truly radical idea of alchemy as an inner process, a transformation of the self, starting from a recognized fallen state.
Right. The inner work.
We navigated the obscure language, the symbols salva coagula, the colors, the green lion, the toad, the phoenix, the golden bough, trying to see them as mapping a psychological and spiritual path.
A demanding path.
Absolutely. We looked at the demanding requirements for the adept intention, purity, the crucial role of faith and prayer, and the powerful obstacles like false aims, mammon, and that inner war between self-will and universal will.
And finally, the goal.
And finally, glimpsing the ultimate goal. Not wealth, but union. Union with the divine, attaining experiential wisdom, embodying transformative power, the philosopher's stone, the true physician within.
It just completely reframes alchemy, doesn't it? Moves it from, primitive chemistry or greedy foolishness onto the landscape of the human soul, the intellect, the spirit's potential for perfection.
And it all seems to echo right back to those few enigmatic lines on the emerald table. That which is above is as that which is below, and that which is below is as that which is above.
That principle of correspondence, it's central. A constant reminder, perhaps, that the greatest mysteries might not be out there, but intimately connected to our own being, the cosmos within us. Understanding the inner world is key to understanding the outer.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this deep dive today? If, as these sources suggest, the greatest secrets, the potential for profound transformation, lie not out there in the world, but within ourselves in confronting our own chaos, purifying our own matter, dissolving and reconstituting our own being well, how does that change the way you look for knowledge or success or fulfillment in your own life? In a world saturated with external information, external validation, external pursuits, is there still a place for the kind of demanding, disciplined, deep inward exploration that these ancient traditions describe? And maybe the biggest question, if so, where might you even begin to look for that first matter within yourself?